Top of the day, beautiful people. I had to restart my, I don't know what's going on with this. Restart my actually my whole thing because YouTube acting up. No, not that. Live. Oh, finally. Okay, I'm live. Sheesh. Top of the day, beautiful people. Sorry for the tardiness. I was live on Facebook. I had to restart my computer and everything. I wasn't able to pull YouTube up or nothing. So I just do the first thing I remember to do first, just restart everything. So sorry for the tardiness. I had to wait for everything to reboot, all that good stuff. But anyway, happy Tuesday, beautiful people. It is November the 15th. 2022, day 264 of year 4, reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets. And of the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1283. Today we're picking back up in the book of Sethantes with chapter 14 or chapter XIV on page 28 in Oahspe. And then once we get finished with a couple of chapters here, we'll probably read, well, they're real short, we'll probably read up to the end of 16, possibly 17, depending on how fast we move. And then we'll hop on over to the Field Guide to the Spirit War and pick back up on page 78, which begins a new chapter entitled Soul Murder. All right. Let me see. Put it right there. There was a question Kevin asked yesterday. I'm not sure if you're here. Maybe I'll wait till the end to answer because I got a few minutes to play with today. Let's see. He asked something about cutting. I didn't see that until later when I went back and looked at all my comments and everything. But anyway, let's get started. Father, we thank you for providing for things ahead of time before it's even known that it'll be needed at a future time. All right, y'all. Anita, greetings. Shebrew, all praises to the Creator, Jehovah's children. Set apart, Ema Grand Rising, Vinay, greetings. Yahweh, Shalom. Tabitha, greetings. Dreadful Cosmon, rise and shine to the righteous gods and goddesses. Elijah, Grand Rising, beloved. Hannah, Grand Rising, sis. All right, y'all. I should have wet that. Hold on one second. Okay, y'all. Jamia, shalom, shalom. All right, beautiful people. Page 28, chapter 14, book of Sethantes, son of Jehovah, chapter XIV. On the second day after the house of Moab was completed, and all the members were in their respective places, Jehovah spake through God, saying, Now is the beginning of the second resurrection. Even as the corporean putteth off the corporal body, and is born a spirit, becoming the first resurrection, so are ye, putting away individual self, and becoming an organic community, the beginning of the second resurrection, right? It's growing in levels. Go ahead and highlight that. I put an asterisk last time, so let me highlight it. Different colors, the difference between the first. So putting off, I'll read it again. Even as the corporean putteth off the corporal body and is born a spirit, becoming the first resurrection, so are ye, putting away individual self and becoming an organic community, the beginning of the second resurrection. So remember we talked about that a little bit yesterday. Now that they are grown up a little bit more, it's time to stop worrying about self, and now we're going to operate as a group and worry about our brothers and sisters, right? Help them to grow, right? Mom, shalom, shalom. Kevin, shalom, brother. Listen, you asked a question yesterday that I completely missed. I didn't see it until later in the day. Your question was, I wonder if self-mutilation is trying to dig the evil out, right? I'm not sure if you read ahead in here, but it actually, there is a portion in Field Guide to the Spirit World that talks about this a little bit. And I remembered it, so I jumped to the back. It's all the way, and we're going to read it when we get done, but it's all the way at the back of the book. Hold on, make sure I put my mark in here where it was at. Yeah, it's called Self-Mutilating Behavior. It starts on page 172 all the way to page 195. So we're going to read that at the end just to kind of answer your question. So I'm glad I went back and just kind of looked over stuff, see if I missed anything. So I want to answer that with what this shares in here. Okay. So let's go back, y'all. Page 28. I'm going to just reread it again. I'm going to start at 1 because we stopped at the end of 2. All right. On the second day after the house of Moab was completed, and all the members were in their respective places, Jehovah spake through God, saying, Now is the beginning of the second resurrection. Even as the corporean putteth off the corporal body, and is born a spirit, becoming the first resurrection, so are ye, putting away individual self and becoming an organic community, the beginning of the second resurrection. As they of the first are for individual self, so have I bound them close on the face of the earth, and they survive on the earth on corporal food. So have I made them to survive in the lowest heaven on atmospheric food. As Moab hath risen above these conditions, so will I exalt the foundations of the house of Moab higher up from the earth than Horeb, and Moab shall be the lower house of my kingdom. The voice of Jehovah departed, and God saluted Hajah in the name of the Father. And a great light enveloped the house of Moab, and in Shinar chanted a hymn of praise. Thereafter God arose and stood in the throne of Jehovah, saying, Hear ye, O all ye people of heaven above and heaven below. The house of Moab in the beginning of the second resurrection is founded in Jehovah's name. Proclaim ye the words that have gone out of my mouth to the east and west and north and south, and to the swift messengers of the arcs of the firmament above. Glory, glory be to Jehovah, boundless and almighty creator, present and full of love, wisdom and power. Glory to thee forever and ever. Amen. The house of Moab chanted a proclamation. The swift messengers assumed their respective globes of light, and began to ascend in every direction, carrying the word to the exalted spheres. And God crowned Hajah as sub-god of Horeb, and he was proclaimed to all the quarters of heaven and earth. And the history of his name exists to this day as Jah among mortals, right? So that's where we get the name Jah or Yah, right? It's the first, we'll say, vice president to the original, the first God of the earth when earth began to be populated by Creator with gods and lords and sub-gods and the ranks, right, to help mortals, because now we're at an age where we can be guided, we can be inspired to raise higher and higher, right, that we may develop spiritually. So he was like vice president. I'm just saying. You ain't got to call him vice president, but I'm going to read it again. Hajah. Remember, Hajah started. When did Hajah? Because before Sethantes went on his journey, gotta go back a couple of pages. Jude hairs all the way back. Highest, which is to never mention oneself. Right, verse 23 in chapter 5 on page 21. Wait, nope, I'm sorry. You got to go back. That's not when they first mentioned his name. He's responding. Verse 20, and Haja, an Etherian, was chosen. They were going through to see who qualified to stand in the place of Sethantes when he went on his journey of a year to visit the different continents on Earth, right? And so you had to be of certain level, understanding, growth, love, and Haja at that time was chosen. Animalistic nature, peace, there you see him. Shalom, shalom. Okay, so it first begins to talk about Haja on page 20 and verse 20, chapter 5, right? Okay, and I read verse 8 again. And God crowned Haja as sub-god of Horeb, and he was proclaimed to all the quarters of heaven and earth, and the history of his name exists to this day as Jah amongst mortals, or Yah. All right, so now we absolutely must adjust, because I highlighted this the first time, but it still didn't click, right? All right, so let's move on to the next chapter. So I will be catching myself and be referring to our Creator as Creator or Father, or one of my more intimate terms, the Most Holy, right? Or the All Light, or the Ever Present, right? Just to make sure now that this is clicking now, I'm just going to adjust. Bronze Yog. Shalom. All right, chapter 15 or chapter XV. Haja said, with the exaltation of Moab, so shall my places be exalted before Jehovah. Let the enumerators of the communities of heaven send representatives before me. The communities of manufacturers who produce food and clothes for the Easians, the communities for hospitals and nurseries, the communities for education, the communities for training messengers, and all other communities. When the representatives came, according to the instructions of the marshals, and were before the throne, Haja said, the toilers shall not always be toilers. The physicians not always runners after the sick. Whosoever is proficient will I exalt. He that can walk shall no longer crawl. Many are wise and strong, and some have passed beyond the boundary of self-desires for self's sake. A child may not have self-desires, but then it lacketh wisdom and strength. A full-grown man or woman may have wisdom and strength, but lack the abnegation of self. I will make every community a double from this time forth, and one shall be called Maga, and the other shall be called Minga. Maga shall be my promoted laborers, who are being prepared for the second resurrection, and Maga's labor shall be in concert with Moab, the house of Jehovah. But Minga's labor shall be as heretofore, even with individual affairs and the organizing of new places for the delivered Easians, who are the fruit of the lords and their kingdoms of the earth. Let my marshals select judges to carry out these my decrees in the name of Jehovah. Chapter 16, Charity. Ooh, I like that pink hand waving. Hey, girl, hey. All right, y'all. Page 29. Chapter XVI, which is chapter 16. From the founding of Horeb until the installment of Haja was 130 years, and at that time the lower kingdom of heaven was fully organized according to the decree of Jehovah, and the kingdoms of the lords on earth were also fully established. And at that time the earth had passed into Hanshi, in the Etherian space, where dwell the Osirian Shrivars, to whom the swift messengers from God had reported the conditions of the earth's surface, with the tablets of grade and ingrade of mortals. The Shrivas said, the earth hath not attained her fullness. The gases of her low regions must be purified to make more places for mortals. So it came to pass, there fell upon the earth by command of the Shrivas, by the will of Jehovah, fire and brimstone, and iron and phosphorus, and the shower thereof reached into 5 divisions of the earth. But ere the fall thereof, God was apprised, and he apprised the lords, and they informed the Ashars, and they impressed such mortals as were in rapport with heavenly things. And the chosen marched away from the places of destruction, so that not one perished. That's still even true today, right? We will be warned of impending doom, so to speak, so we can move out the way. Even if it's, don't take that road today, go the other way. And then later on that day, we find out on the news a terrible accident has happened, and you would have found yourself right in the middle of that had you had kept going earlier today about that time, right? I've seen a lot of instances of that, or being somewhere like time to go, and I've literally been in places sometime, and I'm not sure what happened. I've never seen it on the news, but it's like, put everything back, let's go, right? So I'm just learning how to be obedient, not just, but in those instances when I hear things like that, and it's like gut feeling, I always go with that, because my gut never leads me wrong, right? So, and it's a couple times I've been with the kids, I was like, but Mom, we'll go to another store, but let's just go, right? And they'll be like, oh, and I'll be wanting to be like, oh, but I learned to trust that voice. It could have been, I don't know, it could have been running into somebody, one of my kids knocking something off, and somebody, I don't know, it could have been anything, but I learned how to follow that little nudging, right? Okay. Girl, you ain't opened your eyes good yet. You brush your teeth? Go brush your teeth. And wash your face and come back. And I'll put it in for you. Okay. I'm going to read verse 4 again. So it came to pass, there fell upon the earth, by command of the Shrivas, by the will of Jehovah, fire and brimstone, and iron and phosphorus, and the shower thereof reached into the 5 divisions of the earth. But ere the fall thereof, God was apprised, and he apprised the lords, and they informed the Ashars, and they impressed such mortals. Remember, the Ashars, or who we call guardian angels, right? And they informed the Ashars, and they impressed such mortals as were in rapport with heavenly things, meaning you in tune, you can hear. And they impressed such mortals as were in rapport with heavenly things, and the chosen marched away from the places of destruction, so that not one perished. But many of the Assyrians were consumed in the fire. But God sent extra workmen and surgeons and physicians from heaven down to such spirits as were falling into forgetfulness and dissolution, and commanded that they be engrafted on the surviving Assyrians for pity's sake. And this was accomplished through the lords of the earth and their servants, the Ashars. At the end of 200 years, God enumerated the people in the lower heaven, and there were, besides the spirits of the fetals, many of whom were doubtful as to everlasting life, 296 million souls. Of this number, there had been raised up to the grade of brides and bridegrooms to Jehovah more than 30 million, who were the first of the earth's production. And after more than 30 million, after million, it's reference number 10. And 10 at the bottom says 30 millions with an S at the end of million. All subsequent similar changes are not footnoted. See editor's note number 2. And it just kind of repeats the same all the way at the beginning where you have the editor's notes. And we read over that already. So if you want to go back and look, the editor's notes are on page 19 or XIX after the introduction. It's the very first page after the introduction. There you go. Are you trying to get up here, or are you looking at something else? That's stuck. Okay. Get on something else. Or figure that out and come back and I'll log you in. All right. Or just scroll up out of that. Audrey, shalom, shalom. Okay. Verse 8, page 29. Now was the 6th generation of the seed of the fallen angels delivered, and this was the fullness of earth bondage for them. God summoned the house of Moab for the revelations of Jehovah on the first day of the first year of Dan of Hanshi. And when they were thus assembled and had chanted to Jehovah appropriate anthems for the times past, all the light came upon God, and he said, Behold, the time of Dan of Hanshi is at hand. Ere 3 days pass by, the host from the Ethereal heavens will descend to accomplish the resurrection of my host to the regions whence they came 200 years ago. Some of my lords of the earth and my people of heaven proclaim my words unto them. Ye that people the earth with everlasting life, give ear. The harvest of the new year is ripened. It shall be gathered into the heavens above. Let my people rejoice, for the glory of deliverance is at hand. There awaiteth full hope and love in Osirian fields, hosts of angels and archangels to receive these, the first fruits of the new earth. Clothe them in quietness with rays of light. Make ready, for the Ethereal gods and goddesses are setting sail in the regions above to come and deliver us. Proclaim my words in all places in the name of Jehovah, and add unto them, saying, and to as many as desire to ascend, come ye to Moab in the name of the Son of Jehovah. Remember, son is another name clearly. We're sons and daughters, right? But that's also interchangeable with God, with the title God, right? Clothe them in quietness and with rays of light. Make ready, for Ethereal gods and goddesses are setting sail in the regions above to come and deliver us. And this can kind of be looked at as like rapture. I just remember this from the other day when one of our sisters was in here, and she actually emailed me. And she's pretty nice, but she was still here, but she had she wasn't able to comment anymore because of being timed out. She wasn't blocked, but it was just kind of holding her from posting anything else. So she emailed me or whatever, and she was pretty nice. It seems like she's like in that path, like to where we kind of pass through, you know. It seems like she's open to listen, answer questions, and, you know, so I'm like, okay, you know. So if she come back in, don't mess with her. Let her ask questions. And that was, I forget the name. Forgive me if you already here, just hanging out in the background. Those yours right there? Or they might be upstairs on the desk. You had them last. What jacket did you have on? Voila. Are they in there? That was just your zipper. Oh, sweet. Okay. Okay, verse 15, page 29. Proclaim my words in all places in the name of Jehovah, and add unto them, saying, and as to many as desire to ascend, come ye to Moab in the name of the Son of Jehovah. So remember, these are brides and bridegrooms who are about to ascend, or you can say rapture, but they're not rapture out of a incomplete life and incomplete assignments, that you don't get to go with a bunch of incompleteness. They had many years before, had already what we call here on this plane death. They had already died, right? So they was already in spirit, and they was going through the different levels, and they had made it up to the third heaven, right? That's where you graduate as brides and bridegrooms, what we hear Revelation talking about, right? They just kind of, they pulled it out, push it together with a lot of stuff, thinking that when we die here, we get to be one of them. All right, man. But there's a lot of classes and grades you got to ascend through before you even get the title of bride and bridegroom. All right, BC, shalom, shalom. Okay, verse 16, we're on page 29, we're at the end of chapter 16, verse 16. Messengers went forth both in heaven and on the earth, and proclaimed as had been commanded. And on the third day there assembled in Moab and Horeb 90 million angels to witness the descending and ascending of Jehovah's chosen. And the archangels of Hanshi sent 100,000 gods and goddesses to keep guard, and goddesses to guard Moab and Horeb around about, to dispel and keep away the clouds and sunshine, so as to add glory to the scene. All right, we'll read one more chapter because it's only 10 verses. We'll read chapter 17. chapter 17 or chapter XVII if you're using an electronic version and you can only see Roman numerals. Okay. The Lewis came before God. Remember the Lewis, L-O-O apostrophe I-S. It didn't give us, we didn't get into that yet, right? This is the first time we see the Lewis, if I remember. Make sure I'm mixing it up with the last reading. I think this is the first time we see the Lewis, right? But it's going to get into, oh yeah, right here. Yeah, they're the masters of generations. Those are the ones, you hold the rank and the title of Lewis for, was it 200 years? Did I get that correct? I think that's right? But the master of generations, and you have to be in that, that particular, position for that many years, because as master of generations, it's just that you're literally watching mortals from generation to generation, following families and seeing what happens, right? And Lewises are the ones that kind of pass down prophecies to the Ashars, your guardian angels, to speak based on what has been and the pattern, the family you were born into, the state of the mother, the state of the father, while the child is in the womb, and not just while the child is in the womb, but what the state that the parents were in before the child was even conceived, during the pregnancy. Like all of these things play into what this child will be, right? So that's what the Lewis do. They're masters of generations, and it goes back at least, I think, 6 generations. It takes at least 6 generations to produce a produce a person with the ability to hear the voice of the Father. And it's like everything, like you can hear, you're not like dumb spiritually. It takes 6 generations. It's going to get into that, but let's just read. Chapter 17, verse 1. The Lewis came before God, and having organized themselves into one community so as to make it lawful to speak in Moab, they appointed Oahspe to speak on the behalf of the community. Oahspe said, "Hear me, O God, in the name of Jehovah. Thou hast ordained me according to the custom of heaven to be a master of generations with mortals, and yet one generation is incomplete. Wherefore I have come before thee. This day I have been summoned by Jehovah through thy messengers, saying, to as many as desire to enter hold on, I'm getting tongue tied. I'm going to start verse 2 over. Hear me, O God, in the name of Jehovah. Thou hast ordained me to the custom of heaven to be a master of generations with mortals, and yet one generation is incomplete. Wherefore I have come before thee. This day I have been summoned by Jehovah through thy messengers, saying, to as many as desire to enter the next resurrection, come, for the time of harvest is at hand. Thus said God, Son of Jehovah, behold, now another generation do I desire to dwell on earth. God said, the places of heaven are open to all. If thou wouldest ascend now, do even so. If thou wilt tarry one generation, then thou shalt tarry 200 years, for of such period will be the next harvest. Oahspe said, in Jehovah's name, let my brethren pass before thee in judgment. God said, Jehovah's will be done. Oahspe withdrew and told his brethren what was said, and presently they came in and passed in judgment before God. God said, thou hast said, let me pass in judgment before thee. Hear me then, for this is my judgment. If thou ascend with thy work incomplete, thou wilt be the unhappiest of men. Remain therefore, for a greater glory is within thy reach. The Lewis passed to the left, signifying their determination to tarry yet 200 years more with mortals. After the Lewis came others desiring to be adjudged by God, and to all who had incomplete work, God said, remain, and they remained. Besides these were 70,000 Etherians eligible to ascend, who volunteered to remain with mortals another 200 years. Amongst these were the 5 lords and Haja, and 400 messengers belonging to Horeb, and 700 women in Fetal in the western division of Horeb under Waga, Lord of Waga. And after under Waga is reference number 11. And 11 at the bottom says under Waga, and then in brackets it has Lord of Waga, to whereas at the top it doesn't have the brackets, right? So remember, the divisions of the earth, they were named after actual angels who were once mortal beings like we are, right? So Waga, which is also called Pan, was a person, and the division of the land that he had charge of was named after him. Waga, Pan, same thing like Israel do, named portion of land after it, right? It's not just a place, but it's also a people. All right, so we'll pause right here at the end of chapter 17. All right, whew, right at 29 minutes. Okay, so hold on. A rapture is a one-time event, but resurrection of brides and bridegrooms happen all the time when it is appropriate, right? I agree with that statement. I agree with that, right? It's a continual resurrection. Yeah, so, yeah, just because the word rapture has been thrown around so much in Christianity and all kinds of movies left behind and all this stuff is made, I like the way you put that, right? But I guess it can still kind of be looked at but it's like you said, eligible. Those who are eligible to ascend at this time, right? Because there could be one, but you can't go. Not because you've been bad or something, or you ain't worship Jesus or confess him, or some of that false doctrine that's been taught throughout the millennia. But it's because you're not ready, right? You have not attained to that level. It's just like here, we see it. You can't pass to the next grade until you're ready, right? And some people do pass to the next grade, but it's only so far you can get. Like some places, they will just keep passing you, but ultimately you're going to run into a test, right? And then you're going to be found out. That's just the way it works, right? Those who want to climb the mountain, when they attain to the foot, you don't have to, I knocked it down. When you can attain to the foot, you will find the means and the strength and the wisdom to attain to the top. Let me just read it word for word, because I be screwing that all up. Hold on. That's in the Chamber of Prophecy. Hold on. Merit. Did I pull my thing out? Let me just look it up in the table of contents. I want to read it. It's the same thing. It's the same thing here. What has been will be. It just gets better. Page 564. Yeah, Chamber of Prophecy, page 564. God said, before learning to approach the foot of the throne, what profit is it to show them the way to mount upon the throne itself? Like, why waste your breath and tell them how to get up there and they can't even get to the foot? God said, before learning to approach the foot of the throne, what profit is it to show them the way to mount upon the throne itself? Preserve, therefore, the secrets of prophecy for such as apply themselves to keeping Jehovah's commandments. Those who have attained to the foot can of themselves find the way to mount upon it. I love that. Okay. Every 200 years. Yeah, it says it in here. Every 200 years, there is a resurrection, right? So, look, we did the math. Hold on, real quick. Let's do that again. So, Cosmon started. When did Cosmon start? 1881? Because I be screwing that all up sometime. Let's see. 1881. What was 200 years? What? Wait, did I do that right? I think that I be screwing up. 1848, right? Which takes us to what was it? 2048? I think it was 2048. If that is indeed true, right? So the next resurrection, or the first resurrection after the beginning of Cosmon, would be 2048, right? Am I right? Am I screwing my numbers up still? But y'all get it. 1848 it started, and then you add 200 years. So yeah, 2048. Okay. All right, y'all. So we ain't gonna get into all that. All right, so yesterday, I wonder. Let me ask y'all. Okay, so Kevin asked a question. I was gonna save it to after, but I'll let y'all I'll let y'all answer this, or I'll let y'all choose. Okay, so Kevin asked yesterday, I wonder if after we was just about done reading the portion from the Field Guide to the Spirit World, he said, I wonder if self-mutilation is trying to dig the evil out. So do y'all want me to read the answer to that now, or wait till we read some of chapter 4? You want to, because I don't know, I feel like it might be kind of completing or finishing up yesterday, but we're going to get to it. There's a chapter where it talks about it. But I just want to, do y'all want to, because everybody was like, well, yeah, that's a good question. So I figured I asked y'all. Y'all want to hear like the answer to what this says? Read it? Okay. All right. So we were in The Black Dog Unleashed, which is chapter 3, right? So most of the chapter is talking about suicide, right? How it starts, how people get caught in the trap of that, how they open themselves up to it through traumas, different things inflicted upon them, a lot of just everything, right? So there's also, to find it, I went to the table, not the table of contents, the index. And so I was looking under suicide, I couldn't find it, but I remember, because I listened to it twice, I was like, they talked about this, where did they find it? So I had to look for cutting. In the index, when you find cutting, it has page 172 to 75, right? And so right here on page 172, if you got the book, go ahead and jump to it. And this chapter is entitled Countless Mental Vagaries, which is, what chapter is this? Chapter 7. Let me write this down. Chapter 7, which begins on page 159. All right, so we're not going to read from the beginning of this chapter. Read Kevin answer one time. Okay. We're not going to read the whole chapter, but I just want to kind of jump to where it kind of starts mentioning this, right? Okay, so we're going to get to it in, All right, so let's get to it. On page 172, let's go up to the second paragraph, and we're just going to kind of read through. Shucks, this might take us to the end of the hour. But like I said, I still got a few minutes to play with this morning. So we can still read some of chapter 4. Okay. So the paragraph that starts without the forest in view. Stephen, shalom, shalom. Okay, page 172 in the Field Guide to the Spirit World. Without the forest in view, our neat little categories only create confusion by overlapping so much. Victor's OCD overlaps with MPD. We have yet to grasp the grand principle that underlies all this spillover. Autists, those with autism, after all, tend to present with an array of disorders: MPD, OCD, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, even bipolarism. What is the radical, the one root that connects them all? It all goes back to the prototype of the autist, that exquisitely sensitive human being. The autist has the psychic door open. Stuff flows in willy-nilly. Gifts of the spirit, on the other hand, foster tender-hearted souls, knowingness, and innate gentleness. The open door, on the other hand, can mean exposure, overexposure, hence a terrible vulnerability to sensory extremes like hyperesthesia or ghost seeing, which is why you are, even like I mentioned before, if you go on YouTube, you have people talking about different types of spiritual experiences, to where I was like, well, I went through that and I didn't even get all of that. Our backgrounds, what makes us up, our experiences in life kind of determines the outcome of what we get when we enter there, right? Because some people enter, for lack of better words at this moment, people enter that realm unknowingly and ignorantly, trying to tap in illegally, sometimes using drugs or some other type of things so they can have spiritual experiences. And if they haven't already gone through processes of healing, just different things, they encounter this whole realm that they have no clue how to handle or how to operate, and they get scared. Fear comes in, and that opens up a door, and the spirits that are hanging around, they come in, and it's like, oh my gosh, I done got tangled up into new age moving and got demon possessed, and you have no clue what's going on, right? Which is why I like to say, I mean, I know some people do it under the guidance of, you know, shamans, of, you know, whatever have you, right? But my personal experience is to not do any of that. I want to have the most organic spiritual experience as possible without running into difficulties because something within me has been clogged up, has been covered over by a substance that I was taking to be more spiritual, right? I don't ever want to do that. Now, some people do it and they are great, but that's just not my experience, and that's not the route I choose to take. I literally want to walk the manual. I want to learn the manual way before I learn about the shortcuts, and I can choose whether I want to take the shortcut. I was like, you know what? I enjoy the journey. Let's take the long road, right? You know, it's so much to learn on the long road, but some people don't have the patience for it. Okay. The autist has the psychic door open. Stuff flows in willy-nilly. Gifts of the spirit, on the other hand, foster tender-hearted souls. And these are the ones, like, they just kind of take the long road, so to speak. Not saying that they don't have issues, because they do. It just depends on how you grow, right? And your willingness, your openness, how pliable you are, teachable, all that good stuff, right? Gifts of the spirit, on the other hand, foster tender-hearted souls, knowingness, and innate gentleness. The open door, on the other hand, can mean exposure, overexposure, hence a terrible vulnerability to sensory extremes like hyperesthesia or ghost seeing. Along with the paranormal spectrum are a wealth of talents seen in the autist. Foreknowledge or precognition is second nature. Clairvoyance is just as common as are telepathy and mind reading, communing with angels, capacity to perceive all things seen and unseen. W. Stillman, 2006, page 6. And this is where it gets into the self-mutilation. On the downside are serious difficulties like mutism and suicidal urges and self-harm, like Victor and other autists who sometimes, quote, committed acts of self-injury, end quote. The OCD specialist, Dr. Stephen Levenkron, speaks of Lauren's, quote, self-mutilating behavior, end quote. With over a dozen scars on each arm, Lauren explains her reason for cutting herself. It is a distraction strategy. Now listen to this. Listen to this. Nava, hey girl, hey, Miss Amazing Wonder, shalom. What makes you cut yourself? The doctor asks. Quote, most of the time, all the other stuff, you know, the rituals, the exercises, they use up enough energy so that this doesn't have to happen, end quote. But what do you get from cutting yourself? Pain. What does the pain do for you? It brings me back. It brings you back from what or where? It brings you back from being away from yourself. Like when you go into that sunken place, it's like, y'all seen that movie, Inception? I think it's Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Remember, that, what was it? Sometimes it was like the phone call or a dunking in water or something like that, that brings you back to yourself to make you realize, hey, you were gone. You were in another realm. Come back. It brings you back from that sunken place, right? From being spaced out. It gets your attention, right? And if you, the movie Split, right? The movie Split that we've been talking about. If you watch it, remember the end of the movie to where when the one girl who didn't get killed, right? The young girl where it showed flashbacks of her, growing up hunting with her dad and her uncle. Then we found out that she was abused and she was molested by her uncle. That girl right there, towards the end, when she was kind of like broken free and she had gotten into the room and got into that computer where one of the multiples from Kevin had been typing out and recording all the other multiples when they would come through his body, there were different files on each multiple, right? That room she was in. On the table where the beast had finally arisen, which was one of the multiples, right? And he had superhuman, supernatural strength, and he was a cannibal. He ate the other two girls. Yeah, you got to watch it. Remember, on that paper, y'all remember that piece of paper that she found on the desk, and it said, say his name, and it gave the real guy, Kevin, middle name, last name, wrote it out. One of the multiples, when it was their turn, when they was in the body, and that was the one who was sending all the email messages to the psychiatrist, like, doctor, I forget the doctor's name, we need help us, we need you now. But every time the doctor would call, and when she finally showed up, or he'd come to the office, one of the other multiples had taken over Kevin's body just to kind of, oh no, I was just having a moment, and you know, I just kind of worked through it and I'm okay now, you know. But that was one of the other multiples that was crying out, because it's weird. Kevin had 24 identities in him. You might as well say he had legions of angels. Remember the demoniac from the Gospels who was cutting himself? They were, like Kevin said, he said, I wonder, in Kevin's exact words, he said, I wonder if self-mutilation is trying to dig the evil out, right? So just to go back to this, that what one of the multiples had written on the paper, by calling his name, it's one of those bringing him back, bring me back, right? Because we only saw Kevin, the real person that was inside of that body, we only saw him a couple times. And when he came through, when he was himself again, before they start taking over, he was like, is that Dr. such and such? What happened to her? Did I do that? And she was like, yes. And he said, well, is it still, and he gave a date, is it still, and this is not date, is it still January the 14th, 2014? And she just looked at him like, no. And that was the last thing he remembered, that particular date. But he had been so far gone into the sunken place, and you would see, like, some of the things we're learning through here and some of the terminology, they haven't split. Like, if you haven't really paid attention to it, go back and watch it again. Listen to what the doctors are saying, what he's saying when the different multiples are showing up. He said, I fear that I'm losing time. You know, and losing time meaning you go into the sunken place. It's Friday one day, but when you come to yourself again, it's 3 Fridays ahead of time. And you in the next month like, what? Where was I at? And now you found out you got people locked in chambers. Like, where did these people come from? And this is Kevin like, what is going on here? And when Kevin showed up, because he showed up after the beast, when the beast had taken over, this was the debut of the beast. He finally showed up like he was a monster. And this is something that the physician was talking about. She said, the mind is very powerful. You literally are what you believe you are. And so there were some multiples that was inside of Kevin that was trying, all the multiples saying that they were trying to protect Kevin. Because remember how the different multiple personalities and all this stuff comes in is because of some type of trauma where the native spirit checks out, and the spirit that comes in is like, don't worry about this. We got this. They ain't never going to do this to you again. Right. And they come in to protect the native spirit, right? So that they don't have to feel this pain and trauma. But pain is what brings them back. It's what drives it out, which is why doing exorcisms, and they do electroshock therapy to people who have multiple personalities, because they realize pain will call them back, right? And those altered spirits or different spirits, they don't like pain. They don't want to be inside of a host where pain is being inflicted upon them, which is why they will also drive. It's a couple different things. Some of the people, they're literally trying to cut the evil out themselves. And some of the spirits, if they're taking over, they're literally trying to drive the people to take their life so that they can get out the body. It's you have to be careful when diagnosing this stuff to see what is what here, right? Okay, so look, let me go back. What makes you cut yourself? On page 172 in the Field Guide to the Spirit Realm. What makes you cut yourself? The doctor asked. Most of the time, all the other stuff, you know, the rituals, the exercises, they use up enough energy so that this doesn't have to happen. But what do you get from cutting yourself? Pain. What does the pain do for you? It brings me back. It brings you back from what or where? It brings you back from being away from yourself. When I feel like I'm going to lose myself, there is no other way I can explain it. I feel myself drifting away from myself, and the pain brings me back. Levincron, 1991, page 50. And also in the movie, one of the altars wrote, say his name, Kevin, middle name, last name. I was watching it last night, and that was the first time I had actually paid attention to it, and I read it out loud. I'm like, oh, shoot, because I felt something. I was like, listen, you better not be him. I was like, forget that I just said that name out loud, Joe. I was like, don't say that name out loud. That's why I didn't say the middle name and last name. I might be overdoing it or whatever, but, I had to see the end of this and what was happening. So, but if you watch it, I'm not in the habit of repeating some stuff out loud. But I don't know, it could have just been my guardian angel or something or whatever. But I surely felt the presence. I'm like, yeah, we're not about to do this. Okay, so not to scare y'all, but just, just don't say the name. But anyway, he wrote, say his name, and gave the name, because that was also a way to bring the native spirit, whose name was Kevin, back. And when she said it the first time, it stopped the beast, because the beast was about to attack her. And it snapped him back. It brought Kevin to the forefront. It moved all the altars out of the way, brought the native spirit back to the forefront. And the way she said his name, it brought pain, right? And pain snapped him out of it, because this is amazing how they did this. I'm like, they really understand this and put it in movies to where we just look at it and we don't get it. But when she said his full name, it brought Kevin to the front. All his other 20 plus him, his native spirit was the original, right? So you can probably say it was 25 of them in there, and the first original one being Kevin himself, and the other 24 were altars. It brought Kevin to the forefront. When it brought Kevin to the forefront, he had a flashback of pain of his mother beating him, and she called his name, Kevin, such and such and such, get out here, right? And she had a stick, and she would hit him, and she would beat him. So that's like the pain point bringing him back. I'm like, oh my gosh, they put this in a movie. And so I came back and I looked this up again where Kevin, look, this is crazy. Kevin, but this is Kevin Sears, right? Look, Kevin, listen, all right. I came back and looked at what Kevin had said, and I read through this again. I was like, yo, they put that in there, though, the whole pain point and everything. So let me read this again. I'm going to keep going. Listen. Let me go back up. On the downside are serious difficulties like mutism and suicidal urges and self-harm, like Victor and the other autists who sometimes, quote, committed acts of self-injury, end quote. The OCD specialist, Dr. Stephen Levincron, speaks of Lauren's, quote, self-mutilating behavior, end quote. With over a dozen scars on each arm, Lauren explains her reason for cutting herself. It's a distraction strategy. And also you will notice the girl who actually lived through the end, towards the end, you could see that she also, because it shows, and this, they don't say this, but you will have to really understand what's happening. Yes, you're right, BC. Snapping them in and out of abeyance, right? Hold on. Yeah, hold on, let me go back. Right, Elijah, he said, oh, BC, yes. Me and my son, yes, it does. I haven't pulled it back up. Hold on, let me go back. The screen just jumped. BC said, I still ain't watched it. Isn't it connected to Mr. Glass and Unbreakable? Yes, it is, but we have not put it back on. Remember when I was first talking about Split, I was getting the names of the movies mixed up. I was saying the one with Samuel L. Jackson. The one with Samuel L. Jackson is Glass, which also has Kevin in that movie as well. And they're all locked into an insane asylum. Samuel L. Jackson is the one who had bones like glass. Like he's just be breaking all over the place, right? So, but yes, it is connected, but I gotta go probably before the week is out. I'm going to watch that and I'm going to put it together, but yes, it is connected. And like I said, it still blows my mind finding out all of this, and it makes sense. It does. BC said it's interesting how many suicidal people say they want to escape. Maybe the spirit feels trapped in the flesh, right? Because sometimes it is the native person talking, and sometimes, which we can't decipher a lot of times, it's the spirit that's taking over trying to get out. But we're fooled because they're using the native person's voice and faculties. Right. So you have to be like, you really have to be, I'm going to just say like trained in this field. And even if you're not like school trained, you have to be like spiritually trained, or you have to be so close to the Father where your discernment is amped up and you can notice the differences and what's going on. So it at least drive you to ask the Father questions. What in the world is going on with this child or this whatever? Right. Listen, Kimball Mack, shalom, shalom. Is this the same for people who obsessively tattoo themselves? It could be. It could be. It absolutely could be, right? BC said snapping in and out of a band. So yeah, there are, I gotta look, because there are a couple documentaries on people who have tattooed their entire body, including their face. And it's one that I saw. It's been a while, but they were they started talking about why they began to tattoo themselves. They were literally trying to cover themselves up, and they not necessarily enjoy, but they would get bigger and bigger tattoos and cover over tattoos when they run out of space because that pain. I gotta find that. I see the face of that person. I'm gonna try to find that. But they start talking a little bit about their personal life and some of their traumas and stuff. But that's just a good question. I completely forgot about that. But not all, but some actually do. It's like the same thing. Maybe they don't have the strength to go slice themselves up, so they do like the next best thing. Maybe they'll just get tattoo artists and stuff to do that, right? Oh, but back to what I was saying about the girl who had been molested, the one that lived to the end. You have to really be paying attention, and you began to see as she broke out, because she was pretty much covered the whole video. But as her arms began to be exposed and up here and her stomach, you start seeing these markings all over her body, like somebody was counting days, right? That's what it looked like to me, right? And it had to be done with something thin. I would say a razor. And it almost looks like somebody, you know how people are in jail and every day they're counting down. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. That's what that looks like all over her body. And so I would say, based on what I saw and observed about the movie, I want to say each of those cuts represented a time that her uncle molested her. And her father had a heart attack and died. So there was no protection from this particular beast. But it also goes to speak to whereas even still through the midst of all of this, even though she was withdrawn, oh, snap. I just thought about something. Wait a minute. Listen. Look. Okay. We're going to finish reading this, but I just thought about something about this where it says the pain brings you back. Towards the end of the movie, where the beast was actually there behind like these bars, couldn't get to her. And he couldn't get to her, but she had the shotgun. And so the beast, this is the first time you hear the beast talk. And he began to say things to her. And then he said she did shoot him one time. And he was bleeding through the mouth, and he was looking at her, and he began to notice the marks on her body. And he said, "You're different." He said, "You're not like the others," talking about the other girls in there. These are high school girls. He said, "You're not like the others." He said, "You are pure." And so it just clicked while I was talking about this with the cutting, because of the trauma she was raised in. And mind you, she always went on hunting expeditions with her father and her despicable uncle. But her father never knew, because her uncle threatened to lie on her, right? So she never, even though she wanted to tell her dad what his brother was doing to her. But that never happened. And her father, and he loved her, took her hunting, showed her how to use the gun and everything. And then it came upon the time to where after the father he had went away. I forget, it doesn't show where he at, but he wasn't there, but she was with the uncle, and the uncle had just molested her, and she went and got the gun. Now, they don't show the molestation. They just kind of show scenes where you would think, oh my God, what he about to do to that baby, and it goes to something else. She picks up the gun, and she literally about to take his life. I'm like, girl, I'm like, do it. I'm like, Father, I know that ain't the way what I'm learning now. We should be. I was like, but I would have pulled the trigger. Right, because you ain't going to do this to me no more. And my daddy ain't here to protect me. And my daddy told me how to use this big. I'm going to come take another step. Right? Listen, but she didn't kill him. The uncle snatched the gun away. And he said, what are you doing? You could have killed me. I'm like, and she should have. I'm yelling at the TV. Listen. So what happened was when the beast said, you're not like the rest, you're pure. Now remember, she had all the makings. Everything was right for an altered multiple personalities to overtake her body. But now it just clicked. It didn't, because every time she got multiple marks all over her body, right? Which brought her back from that place of just going away. And you could see throughout the movie, she would have spaced out moments like, hey, are you there? Like the girls would joke like, why do we have to bring her? Why is she here? Right? But because she never allowed herself to go fully away from herself, the cuttings brought her back, right? I just completely got that while saying this. Listen. Hunting as a child, seeing death, definitely leaves a mark. Those children who never seen an animal pass freak out when they do. The child tells the truth. They do, right? Okay, listen. Let's finish this. Okay. But what do you get from cutting yourself? Pain. What does the pain do for you? It brings me back. It brings you back from what or where? It brings you back from being away from yourself. When I feel like I'm going to lose my mind, there's no other way I can explain it. I feel myself drifting away from myself, and the pain brings me back. Levenkron, 1991, page 50. I became more aware of cutting when I found out that two of my neighbors, both young men, were cutters. How rare could this be, I wondered. When I hit the books, the first thing I noticed about cutting and self-mutilation is that it knows no bounds, no territory. Cutters inhabit almost every psychiatric domain: OCD, MPD, possession, depression, and after depression there's an asterisk, and the asterisk at the bottom says, like the news story about a 14-year-old suicide who had been on depression medication, the Ohio 9th grader was a cutter. Okay, so go back up. When I hit the books, the first thing I noticed about cutting and self-mutilation is that it knows no bounds, no territory. Cutters inhabit almost every psychiatric domain: OCD, MPD, possession, depression, bipolarism, ACD, Satanism, and even Christian sex, SECTS, Christian sex, that go in for self-flagellation and mortification of the flesh. So here again is a world of overlap, begging for a comprehensive view. It was a bit of a shock, though, when Major David Morehouse began cutting himself. In his stunning and highly recommended book, Psychic Warrior, I might have to get this, see if they got an audible for this. In his stunning, and let me read the whole thing so y'all can get his name just in case y'all want to get it. It was a bit of a shock, though, when Major David Morehouse began cutting himself. In his stunning and highly recommended book, Psychic Warrior, this decorated officer tells his own story with great candor, how his helmet was hit by a bullet, how the resulting ACSs made him a perfect candidate for the government's secret experiments in remote viewing and psychic espionage. Remember, we read over this, right? The CIA document videos. There's a playlist. If you haven't read over this that was released by the government, you should read that. We read it out loud. And it gives proof that this stuff is real. Remote viewing, alternate, remote viewing, out-of-body experiences, astral projection, whatever you want to call it. They tested this. They said yes, and every person is capable of it. And they learn how to use it as a tool for their own selfish reasons for the government. And then when they done using these men and women in the military, they just discard them. And then fight with them and won't give them their benefits. They literally got to fight to get this. And they about to take their life because you misused them. Right? And I'm just getting started. It was a bit of a shock, though, when Major David Morehouse began cutting himself. In his stunning and highly recommended book, Psychic Warrior, this decorated officer tells his own story with great candor, how his helmet was hit by a bullet, how the resulting ACSs made him a perfect candidate for the government's secret experiments in remote viewing and psychic espionage. And it has ESP in capital letter. While it's spelling out espionage, it has the ESP capitalized and the rest of the letters in lowercase. But with his mind's eye open, the haunting images were unstoppable and the OBEs uncontrollable. I got the superb phrases, quote, in the ether and, quote, touching the darkness, end quote, from David's brilliant testimony. These were nightmares and depression. So remember, we are to develop these things, what people would call gifts, right? But the Father created us to develop into these things, right? But that's a lifelong process at a slowed rate, because when the military does this, like, boom, we give you a week course, we show you how to do this to where the growth is organic. And the Father teaches you this and helps you test things throughout the course of life. As your understanding grows and your wisdom develops, these things, these gifts, or these things that should be gifts, it can develop appropriately and organically, and you have your life experience and stories to share about when it started happening and what you observed and stuff, right? People don't get that when they're thrown in here and you're given a week course and boom, let's put it to work. You can work for us using this, right? They don't get the experience. They don't really get to develop it really on their own. Right, exactly, Bronze. And the gifts aren't for you personally. They are to help others, right? They are to help others. I mean, you benefit because you're like, oh my gosh, you get to see stuff and you're developing. Your comprehension is developing. You grow in the process, but as you are growing and you're developing this, is to help your brothers and sisters, right? As a community, right? These are community. They're individual, but they're community gifts, right? It's for the overall development of the body. Just like you have there are different things, like every part of my body is amazing in itself, right? But if my hand stood alone by itself, how good would it be? Just like, I mean, it's only so much my hand can scratch of itself, right? I mean, shoot, you can you can help the body out over here. I mean, if you go off to yourself, who's gonna help you scratch your back? Well, we got another hand, right? You know, I mean, your gifts will help you a little, right? But when you apply it to the rest of the body, oh my gosh, we can wash the body, right? Oh my gosh, you can really only do this, right? If you just, y'all get it, right? It's for others. You benefit little, but when you apply that gift to the overall whole, it becomes amazing. Okay. Listen. Okay, but we're on page 173. But with his, quote, mind's eye open, end quote, or his third eye open, the haunting images were unstoppable and the OBEs uncontrollable. I got the superb phrases, quote, in the ether, end quote, and, quote, touching the darkness, end quote, from David's brilliant testimony. There were nightmares and depression. Worst of all were David's fears of harming himself or others. His hands trembled even thinking about the awful vision he had of killing his entire family. And then there was the cutting. He pleaded with the army psychiatrist, quote, why would I cut myself, end quote. Was it the dark ones in the ether? The doctor hedged, quote, you mustn't let yourself believe that something came out of the darkness and lacerated you, That just can't happen. I believe that the images that come freely to you are messages or symbols from deep in your limbic system, end quote. Morehouse, 1998, page 511, page 272 to page 274. Now this right here, this is what a lot of psychiatrists, especially if they're not in tune with the spiritual realm, they clearly know something is happening, but they really do believe that it's just coming buried deep down into, we need to just walk you through these things in your life just to help you sort it out. Yeah, they found out this was wrong. They even show this in the movie Split when the doctor said the beast doesn't exist. It's just, this is a character you created to protect yourself, you know, and it's so, if that's the way you believe you'll be protected, and it's okay to believe that, but don't believe it's this real thing that's going to take over you, because it would not be. It would just be you trying to act this out. This is your own fictional character, right? Until she met the beast, and the beast squeezed the living daylights out of her body. When I say the beast squeezed the living daylights, like all the living life daylights, she went night-night. She died. I mean, it's not funny, but I'm like, oh, I bet you wish at that, look, when she, y'all gotta watch it. Go watch it. I'm gonna leave the doc alone. But they believe, they don't really believe this. They really just think it's all in your imagination. You're welcome, Tabitha. Thanks for your platform, Sister Pam. I learned about this OBE in this generation. I only read about it in Oahspe with those. Really, you never experienced it. Yo, it's crazy, but it's amazing. But yeah, look into it. People got all different kinds of experiences, and the ones that tend to teeter on the dark side, it gives me an indication that there has been trauma, hurt or something somewhere, or they're trying to access, they trying to be like the dude in the New Testament where he going and he's like, oh, you can do what? Let me get this gift too. How much I need to pay you for this? And them boys running out there naked, screaming and hollering, right? You're like, that ain't growing organic. And that you ain't gonna get it organically. You're gonna get a whole different type of result if you try to acquire this way, right? And so I'm like, walk closely to the Father while this is developing, right? Okay, look. There were nightmares and depression. Worst of all were David's fears of harming himself or others, his hands trembling even thinking about the awful vision he had of killing his entire family. And then there was the cutting. He pleaded with the army psychiatrist, quote, why would I cut myself? End quote. Was it the dark ones in the ether? The doctor hedge. You mustn't let yourself believe that something came out of the darkness and lacerated you. That just can't happen. I believe that the images that come freely to you are messages or symbols from deep in your limbic system. End quote. Morehouse, 1998, page 511, page 272 to 274. And so it's back to the almighty brain for the answers, at least according to David's doctor and all her comrades in orthodox psychiatry. The cutters themselves, though, no different. The super multiple Jenny, for instance, knows it is the dark ones, starting with her alter Wanola, quote, who did things to Jenny, burned her and cut her, but people thought Jenny did it to herself, end quote. Spencer, 1989, page 218. Cutting is not unusual in MPD, or multiple personality disorder. One of Cameron W.'s alters, quote, found the X-Acto knife and / made 3 deep gashes in my right arm, end quote. West, 1999, page 162. Quote, every time I hurt myself, end quote, averred Beverly R., another multiple, quote, it was always very quiet and methodical. I know now it was one of my inside people hurting me, end quote. Susan A. also cut herself. She comments on her changing attitude towards such, quote, self-destructive activities, end quote, upon meeting other multiples and seeing, quote, their self-inflicted wounds, end quote. Wow. Cohen et al., 1991, page 54 and page 130. Yet another multiple, the therapist asked to see her arms, and they were covered with grooves. Quote, it looked like a miniature plow field, end quote. Schoenwolf, 1991, page 22. Quote, he would cry out and cut himself with stones, end quote. The book of Mark, chapter 5, verse 5. Time and place have little effect on the strange ritual of self-wounding. In Africa, a possessed man wounds himself with stones and pieces of wood. In India, the person possessed by Pisaka, quote, tears his flesh with his nails, end quote. Ostrich, 1935, page 173.
I watched it.
Oh, virtual today.
Yeah.
I'm about to say, what is you still doing here? Okay.
Well, look, I watched the documentary.
Okay. Well,
I
boom. Okay. All right. We ain't talking about that. Listen. Okay. We'll talk about that. That's a whole different subject. Take that. Are you going live down here?
I'm going now.
Okay. All right. He just watched Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. So
and under something.
Okay, we'll talk about this.
Just know
kind of a different topic.
They said 1% that follows it, or a certain percentage that's right, they think can affect the rest of the percentage of the world. People that are unconscious, they don't even have to do nothing. They say people that are unconscious.
See, he don't care. He don't care about my time here. And I told him this is a different subject. He's still gonna keep talking.
Because it's so.
Go.
Because you can feel.
Go. You gotta love Jeremiah. Okay. Okay. We're on page 174, y'all. Time and place have little effect on the strange ritual of self-wounding. In Africa, a possessed man wounds himself with stones and pieces of wood. In India, the person possessed by Pisaka, P-I-S-A-K-A, quote, tears his flesh with his nails, end quote. Ostrich, 1935, page 173. Quote, it is a true compulsion, end quote, declared Annalise Michael, the fatally possessed German girl who inflicted wounds on herself, presumably to control her state of consciousness. Goodman, 1981, page 84 to 247. Y'all, the more this I read and understand about this, like my heart really goes out to people who they throw into insane asylums and just try to give them medicine just to, look, we ain't got time for all that. Like my heart, like I really want to weep. And these people are crying out. It's like, how is that any different from being kidnapped and being thrown in a dungeon and screaming out and nobody can hear you crying? And you're right there under the house. And people living here, the girls, when they got, well, the one girl that lived, when she realized they were, from the way it looked like it was out somewhere where nobody was. But all this time, they were under the zoo, right? Which I can understand. You hear the animals, even if you heard the screams or whatever, it's at the zoo. You got animals and stuff, and it's down under. He was an employee there. It's like, man, I'm like, people are really trapped in a prison, and all these people around, and nobody can hear them screaming, right? And people it's like you see clues. I'm like, man, what is that? That's odd. And just keep on going about their business. You know, man, Father, wake us up, and man, I'm grateful for Susan B. Martinez and this book. I'm sure she's not the only one that talks about stuff like this, but I guess this is the first one that's really caught my attention, and it really has me looking at things in a different light, and even thinking about deliverance and church deliverance ministry and some of this stuff, casting out devils and people, and everybody just mental disruptions and all of this stuff. I'm like, I'm just in hindsight now, I'm sitting back and I'm going through some of these things that I experienced with different people being in different places and just really walking through the situation again and looking at stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do we miss that? You know, and it's just, this is mind blowing to me. But let me finish reading this. I'm going to read this to the end of page 175. We're at an hour, 18 minutes. Like I said, I got some time to play with today. But we may not start the next chapter. We may not. Okay. let's see. Quote, "It is a true compulsion," end quote, declared Annalise Michael, the fatally possessed German girl who inflicted wounds on herself, presumably to control her state of consciousness. Goodman, 1981, page 84 and page 247. Or as F.D. put in her anonymous testimony of the, quote, "spiritual assault," end quote, that plagued her as a naive ashram devotee, and, quote, "unseen force tried to make me do actions against my will, including hurting myself," end quote. Or the possessed girl Marianne, in her fits, would, quote, "tear her own skin or batter her head against the wall," end quote. Martin, 1976, page 59. Or Becca, Dr. Peck's anorexic, suicidal, and possessed patient who would slash her arms with, quote, "Nazi knives," end quote. Peck, 2005, page 147. A Swiss Army knife was the slasher of choice for a teenage vampire gang in Florida, though some used an X-Acto knife or razor blade. Quote, "Rod's arms and chest were covered with marks all up and down," end quote. The other kids, quote, "had weird cuts too," end quote. One of the girls, Heather, quote, "in her peculiar dream world, would position the edge of the blade on her inner arm and slice," end quote. "Had she been," quote, "taken over," end quote. Another member, Janine, during one of this gang's cutting rituals, quote, "felt like she was someone else. It was as if she was on the ceiling looking down at the scene," end quote. Clearly an OBE. Jones, 1999, page 8, page 34, page 177. Gloria Shalom. When Andy H., a bipolar guy, says he doesn't remember cutting himself, that lost time signals When Andy H., a bipolar guy, says he doesn't remember cutting himself, that lost time signals self in abeyance. Or he lost time and he doesn't remember, that means he was out, he was in a sunken place when this happened. Something else was taking over, it was driving your body. Jamil said, "Have they not found out how to help them fully?" They don't want to talk about it for real. They still want to push medicine. Some people do. Thankfully, there are some people getting in the field. They're just trying to, and I'm not in that field. I do read some medical articles and different things of the such, even more now since I started like reading Oahspe and just really looking into things and observing things. And I'm just like, what are people doing? If they would stop denying that the spiritual realm actually exists, and this could be other people actually infiltrating these people's bodies, they'll get a little bit further, right? And I don't know. I'm not a medical physician. Neither am I authorized to give any kind of medical advice. Like, let me say that. But from my observance, just from the little bit, and I haven't even begun to scratch the surface yet. I think we're moving in that direction, but I still think we got a long way to go. So I really do believe it's incumbent upon those who are spiritual and understand these things, not just like, okay, we're going out here to help everybody. I ain't doing that. What I'm saying is I'm going to stay in my lane. And when things come across my path, when I can see and I can recognize, I'll seek wisdom on if I'm supposed to intervene, how I should intervene to help said person. Because it's a couple people in my sphere of influence that has some of this stuff going on, right? And I've been observing asking questions, just kind of stand back a little bit and just different things, looking at some of the traumas that they've experienced, some of the things that they shared with me. Actually talking to one of them and talking to a couple different multiples. I was joking with my sister the other day. I'm like, girl, it's scared the piss out of me. I said I was scared to turn my back on my butcher block in my kitchen because I didn't know if that person that was speaking at that time was going to take a knife and try to kill me in my house. Like, I was so serious. And I was just telling her this the other day. We was laughing. I make jokes about everything, just try to lighten it up. But this is real. Like, and when talking to this person, I could tell when it switched over. It was ever so slightly. But when I realized it real quick, I'm like, Father, what's that? I was like, because I'm no longer talking to such and such person. And so I began to ask questions. And I'm just like, yo, you can't make this stuff up. They told me that they were one of the ones who had lived from the beginning of time. And that they were a God and that they created a lot of this stuff. I'm like, and I'm in my head thinking like, holy SHIT. Like, and I'm trying to stay calm, not to make faces and shake, because I had already, we was halfway reading through Oahspe, and I had read over some of this stuff. And I know this person hadn't read through Oahspe, like, because you haven't even reached your 30s yet, right? And I know this was not, from what I know, this book is not on your radar. So some of this stuff, it was like, I'm just like, I didn't know what to do. And my sister is a medical professional, and I'm just like, and I know you don't work in a psychiatric portion of it, but you are on like suicide watch and you're training and some of this stuff. I'm like, what in the world? And that's when I got to talking about, I was like, I was scared because we was in my kitchen talking. When I say, and this was a day, we had a project going on and the kids were here, but like my husband wasn't here. Like I said, we had another project going on and they was pretty much gone the entire day. But when I said this normal person doesn't, and people can talk sometimes, but when you have the strength to talk for 6 hours straight, standing here in my kitchen, and I stand up a lot, and I had to sit down, and I'm wondering I'm like, is this person getting tired? Like, all this stuff I'm running through my head, being like on the top of making sure I'm just being aware, because I'm not sure what's going to happen, right? Not that I was afraid, but I kind of was, and I didn't know what to expect. I'm just gathering information, making sure the kids y'all go upstairs and I'm thinking, what if there's a flip out? My gun is upstairs, but do I want to kill this person? Like, all of this stuff is going through my head. Like, all this, like, this is real. And the person that I was talking to was not the native person. It was an ancient spirit. And I'm just like, first of all, I don't even understand how you would even get access to this particular person, not a spirit as ancient as this. And it's just, y'all, and this is real. Like, the hair on my arms is standing up. And I don't want to say like too much, because I'm still learning and just observing stuff. And it's just like, I don't know. I'm still learning, just like y'all. What I do know is I'm not foolish enough to say that this is all in your head. Like, because I could tell the change and switch and some of the words and how you were talking doesn't, that's not like the real person I know. I'm like, that's, you know how when you talking to somebody, it's like, that ain't them talking, because you know this particular person. It's a whole different type of personality. And it's crazy, right? So yeah, it's just, we gotta really be careful. I really know that it's not all in people's head. There is a lot of truth to this. But yeah, so that's all I'm gonna say about that at this moment. Because this is still an active situation. So look, okay, hold on. Let me go back up here. Okay, let's go to the bottom of page 174. It was still kind of in that paragraph. A Swiss Army knife was the slasher of choice for a teenage vampire gang in Florida, though some used an X-Factor knife or razor blade, quote, Rod's arms and chest were covered with marks all up and down, end quote. The other kids, quote, had weird cuts too, end quote. One of the girls, Heather, in her, quote, peculiar dream world, would position the edge of the blade on her inner arm and slice, end quote. Had she been, quote, taken over, end quote. Another member, Janine, during one of this gang's cutting rituals, quote, felt like she was someone else. It was as if she was on the ceiling looking down at the scene, end quote. Clearly an OBE. Jones, 1999, page 8, page 34, and page 177. This also reminded this particular instance that I'm talking about. One of these questions I asked, this particular spirit that was speaking at this time, one of the multiples that was speaking, I asked, well, who are you? Because they said, well, I'm not such and such, the name of this native person's body whom they was using. They said, this person died years ago. I'm like, what do you, now when they said this, I immediately brought my mind to something on why. So I was like, what do you mean they died years ago? I'm right here talking to you now. Oh no. I said, well, when did you come in? I mean, I said, oh, because they said, well, I'm trying to keep away from the gender specific and letting you know whether this person is male or female or whatever, right? So I'm just kind of, because like I said, it's still like an ongoing situation, and from time to time, this particular person like comes in, right? So I want to kind of keep this as like protected as, you know, while I'm learning why, you know, because I really want to make sure this person gets free. They said they came in. This is crazy, y'all, because this was before I had even got this book. Because this person had was taken to a facility. But before the facility, there was a trauma that had happened to this person, and the native person had an out-of-body experience and was watching the scene. There was a real trauma situation, of a trauma violence situation that happened where this began to happen. They said it was that point where the native person died and they took over the body, right? And I'm just like, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, when I said I was scared, but I wasn't scared, but I was scared low key. I'm like, this is a real horror movie taking place like right now. Like, and I'm just like, who do I tell? Who do I share this with? It's like trying to, you know, because it's, I don't know. But a lot of these things that is talking about from this particular person I was talking to, they're saying a lot of these key things. And I know that they hadn't read this book and they hadn't read Oahspe, you know, and it's just, this is wild. Okay. It was as if she was on the ceiling looking down at the scene, end quote. Clearly an OBE. Jones, 1999, page 8, page 34, page 177. This one particular, the situation, I noticed that they were also losing time because they mentioned why they write stuff out. They say they have to keep reminding themselves, and that it wasn't dawning on me at the time. It's dawning on me like now in these last couple of days, this conversation, they said, well, I got to keep writing things down like birthdays of everybody and this, and so I can remember, because I tend to forget some of the stuff that I know I should remember. And then when people snap off at me and it's like, well, yeah, I should have known that, but I really have to remind myself. I'm like, holy crap. They were like literally laying this stuff out of what's happening. But during that when we was having this conversation, I knew something was happening, but I wasn't catching the clues. I wasn't picking up on this. They were literally laying it out. This is what's happening. I'm losing time, or this, like, I'm just, y'all. Okay. When Andy H., a bipolar guy, says he doesn't remember cutting himself, that lost time signals self in abeyance. Enter the intruder. We know, too, that when a multiples alter, quote, takes the spot, end quote, she can harm herself, yet feel no pain. Miss Beauchamps, I probably said that wrong. I'm going to just say Beauchamps. Miss Beauchamps alter, for example, quote, had a will of her own, could hypnotize the other personalities and exhibit complete tactile anesthesia, end quote. Fodor, 1966, page 280. Page 280. It was the same deal with Jenny's alter, Selena, who, quote, in her anxiety enacted self-punishment by cutting or burning that she could not feel, end quote. Spencer, 1989, page 255. Then when Jenny, quote, came back, end quote, the pain and humiliation was all hers, right? The spirit runs up tickets in your name and you got to pay for it. You got to do the time because you weren't even present when all this stuff was taking place, although your body was, right? Bo, you laughing at me, Bo Champs? How you say it? You know, me and my pronunciation of stuff, you gotta like sound it out like I'm a kindergartner for real. Otherwise, I'm just tell you up front. You know what? I apologize now for screwing up some of the things I know I'm gonna screw up when I read it. Just help a sister out. If you can put out the proper pronunciation, I look up and I see it, I'll go back and correct myself. But right now, I see Bo Champs. And I knew it. I know it's probably like one of them French sounding betois, you know, or, you know, something like that, but I don't know. I ain't that slow, but that's why I be asking for help. Okay, look. Najamia, she said, y'all seen the movie Hide and Seek? This conversation reading is making me want to rewatch it. I haven't, but I am. Hold on. Hide and Seek. I'm going to go look it up. Okay. All right, y'all, we almost done. We got this last paragraph, and then we're at an hour and 35 minutes. Okay. Hold on. It was the same deal with Jenny's alter, Selena, who, quote, in her anxiety enacted self-punishment by cutting or burning that she could not feel, end quote. Spencer, 1989, page 255. Then, when Jenny, quote, came back, end quote, the pain and humiliation was all hers. But something is wrong with the analysis that Jenny's biographer offers. She thinks that Selena's cutting and burning, quote, gave some relief from the anxious, terrible feelings, end quote. How so? The concept hardly makes sense. Why would such abuse relieve anxiety? The rare male multiple, most are female, Henry Hawksworth, was burned on his arms by his alter, Johnny. The question why was posed through an automatic writing technique that the doctor and patient had developed. The answer came that the burns were meant, quote, to provide a constant reminder of Johnny's existence. The burns were visible signs of his presence and his power, end quote. Hawksworth, 1977, page 29 and page 106. Maybe it is the Dark Ones after all. Maybe Ina Twigg was right in her analysis of one particular nasty haunting. Quote, the spirit had been so determined to make someone pay attention, emphasis added on pay attention, that he had overshadowed the entire family. After I talked with the spirit, the haunting stopped and never occurred again, end quote. Twigg and Broad, 1973, page 109. Oh, wait, let me finish this. I didn't realize this was still going on about Johnny. So let me finish this. I thought that was the end of it. It's still talking about this altered Johnny. On page 176, Henry Hawksworth disliked his altered Johnny. Johnny is not me, yet he wears my body and ruins my world, end quote. Hawksworth, 1977, page 242. A haunting is one thing, but the invasion of your very own body and mind is another. Johnny, as Henry insisted, was not a part of him. He was a separate entity. He was a separate identity. Now the psychiatric profession may have finally recognized MPD, but they still don't understand it. Kind of answering your question a little bit, Jamil. Up here where you said, have they not found out how to help them fully, right? A haunting is one thing, but the invasion of your very own body and mind is another. Johnny, as Henry insisted, was not part of him. He was a separate identity. Now the psychiatric profession may have finally recognized MPD, but they still don't understand it. Mistakenly, they assume the alters are broken off parts of self, quote, shattered pieces of the patient, end quote. Knoll, 1990, page 35. SciMat, of course, requires it, or more to the point, no other, quote, scientific explanation, end quote. No other, quote, scientific, end quote, explanation is in sight. So, hey, let's just call it other personalities that have, quote, split off, end quote, and submerged into one's unconsciousness. Yet the sufferers themselves know otherwise. Quote, they're not personalities, doctor. They're people, end quote. Quoted Billy Milligan, the multiple with 24 alters. Kind of like the movie Split. Who had 24 alters in his body. And they would, if you haven't watched it yet, but for those who have, every time a multiple would take the scene, the person, they would lead the person to change their clothes. Like when Miss Patricia showed up, he went and put on women's clothing. When Hedwig showed up, which was the 9-year-old boy, you know, he said, I have blue socks. You know, he spoke with a lisp. I have red ones too, right? You know, and they acted in character and they wore the clothes of such character. The intelligent person, they got nice and suave, you know, nice and clean and shirt buttoned up, dressed to the nines, right? You know, and he was the professor type person. Like, dude played this part. When I say dude played this part, dude played this part. And towards the end, when they all started fighting for, like when she called Kevin's name and brought Kevin back, all of them was like, oh no, we need to send him to a deeper place. And they all started fighting. You could see him going through like, hi, this is the beast. Get back. No, dear. Miss Patricia said, no, get out of here. And I'm just like, what the crap? Even Jeremiah, he came down and watched it. He said, what is going on here? He said, is that Split? You know, because he's seen like previews and stuff. Yeah, look, Billy Milligan sounds like some possessed person like Malachi from the Children of the Corn, right? You know, some names you should just stay away from.
He's an awesome guy, okay? He played off of X-Men. He plays his role beautifully.
He does. Dude is an amazing actor. When I say they got the right person to play this jank, they got the right person to play this jank. Look.
It's crazy because they have a whole moment where they like lock in.
Well, first of all, while you playing, some of them do actually, listen, y'all, Hollywood got to be careful. Listen, some of them, they be playing it, but some of them will tell you. Like, some of them are outright. Like, Beyonce, her alter, Sasha Fierce, she says she channels Sasha. I believe that 100%. You can tell the shift and you can tell the difference between Beyonce and Sasha if you pay attention to it. There's quite a few of them, and they will tell you. They channel these altars. And they come in and they just let them do their thing. Beyonce's like, I could never get down to plot like Sasha be getting down. And she said, I can't do that. I got to channel her to do that. And Sasha be going without whatever. But Sasha be getting it.
But that
I'm like,
condone of the
right. I'm not saying, listen, we got all kind of examples around here. People that tell you, yo, yes. And like people that, I don't know how to say this. I'm not going to say some people enjoy it, but some people do. And it's like, it start off what they think is cool, right? But you're right about that, Cosmo. Sasha is a Druge, right? Druha, right? At first, it's okay, right? Until they get entrapped by this spirit. Right now, you use them and they'll let you use them to get all the fame and whatever it is that you want while you're here. But that's the further to pull you in, because you're going to be their hoe. When you die, when you give your flesh back to the dirt for a period of time. If I can put it that way, right?
They're going to get the wet napkin, they're going to smack you with the backhand, with the
white glove. They let you use them, right? They let you, it's like this even give and take. Where you let me use your body, I'll get you this, and we can get fame and whatever it is that you want, right? There's this, they like have this conversation with the, like they really do. This is a real thing. But what they don't realize, and people call it selling your soul to Satan, whatever you want to call it, don't play around with it, because it's a real thing. Because when you die, now they're gonna be completely in control, and now you become their slave, right, for a period of time until whenever you're delivered from Hada, my G, right? They thank you, Cosmine. They make deals with the spirit, you know, and this is a real thing. So, okay, did I finish this? Hold on. Oh, let me read this paragraph right here. Hold on. Pause this, Stella. Or you got to take it over there because it's kind of loud. We're on page 176. Yet the sufferers themselves know otherwise. They're not personalities, doctor. They're people. I should have said, quote, they're not personalities, doctor. They're people, end quote. Quoteth Billy Milligan, the multiple with 24 altars. Poor Billy. Most of his doctors wanted to fuse Billy's altars, merge them together, presumably for, quote, the healing process, end quote, to take place, quote, to make him whole again, end quote. Now that seems absolutely foolish to me. Now that I understand this, you want to fuse, you're going to make this man even crazier. Billy, you think Billy crazy now? Try to merge all these persons, you think these just broken off pieces of him. No. Mommy. Yes, babe. Have Dad opened those yet? Then don't open them. Poor Billy. Most of his doctors wanted to fuse Billy's altars, merge them together, presumably for, quote, the healing process, end quote, to take place, quote, to make him whole again, end quote. This part of the therapist's agenda is called fusion or integration, a magnificent hybrid. But the patient took a different view. Quote, why do you have to fuse them with me? Why can't you get rid of them? End quote. Like, I'm with the patient. Don't try and make us one. Get rid of them all together. I'm sick of them.
And it's funny because they can literally hear this. All you have to do is find a way to have a certain vibration to mess with their atoms to literally get rid of said spirits. But they don't do that because one day will fork up a whole lot of money. I'm going to be honest. It is very
what you mean
easy.
It
is extremely easy to get rid of spirits inside of your soul. Spiritually, to actually hone it and do it yourself, okay, it's a little bit more harder because that needs mastery. But let's say if it's an actual device doing it, it's not that hard. They have that technology, but they don't want to do it because, man, that's going to be out of our money.
Wait,
that's
why are you walking around? What are you doing with that?
The veil that we've portrayed is going to go, over everybody, and it's not. And our game is up. They're gonna try to make this game last as long as possible. They're gonna die. They're gonna live, breathe, and preach this to the day they die. They is not giving up, even though they see loss is in clear view.
Okay, I don't disagree with a lot of what Jeremiah said. Hold on. Listen, I don't disagree with some of the stuff he said about what, Pootie, what are you trying to do? You what? What? You hungry? Oh, Jeremiah, what you making you?
I just got done.
All right, can you give us something real quick while I finish this up? 8:06. What time?
I have no idea. I don't know if I'm awake right now, to be honest.
Boy, listen.
Come in, to be honest. They're in the start, so I'm not gonna be like lately. I'm probably gonna do it.
Yeah, like a misdiagnosis. Listen, Prince called you J Light. He said, teacher J Light. Look,
thank you so much.
But it is now. I let him talk doing that because I still haven't given y'all the what I want to share with y'all about this whole
Man.
Cause we had an issue with Jeremiah some years ago, and we don't want to talk about this yet.
That's a very uncomfortable subject.
Which is why, like, we had our own. But as I began to look at stuff, I'm like, how could something like this happen, right? But I started thinking about, like, going back early in school, you know, with different things, the kids picking on him, joking him about his head and stuff, and he has the perfect head.
I had the shoes, the clothes I used to
right. Yeah, so the people, when he would get a haircut, James would give him a Caesar and everything, just kind of keep his hair under control and everything. But kids would joke him, which we didn't know, we didn't understand at the time. So he would get really upset with his dad when he would take him to get a haircut. And James was like, well, pull yourself together. You get a haircut, you're going to walk around here looking crazy, right? But we didn't understand he was dealing with some of the bullying and stuff that was happening with him. Jeremiah, do me a favor. Open up. What do you want, Bella?
She don't even want that. She wants the cookie.
Oh, that's what. Listen, I told you that. Yeah, that's when you started whining.
Ask Dad.
Call Dad. Call Dad. He gonna tell you, yeah. Nah, he already left out. He already left out.
Well, go call him. He said yes to anything you say anyway. You asked. Go ahead and ask.
Listen. But also, see, we didn't realize a lot of that stuff was going on with him in school. Just kind of give you a snippet, but not really get into the story, because I think I'll be able to tell y'all the whole story as we get through here. But even sitting back looking at some of this stuff, and listening to different music like Eminem, the vibrations and stuff coming from that, the lyrics from Eminem, just like a lot of stuff, because he was already resonating on some of those lower levels. So that music that hit on those levels don't help, right? And so we were still kind of ignorant, and just like a lot of different things we were trying to figure out. Bella, stop it. He calling to ask Dad now. Go ahead. Go ask Dad on the phone.
Yeah, can we go get these cookies? She called him first and interrupt him on the video. Can she get some of these cookies?
She want to know if she can have a couple cookies.
Yeah, she's ruining on the video. Yeah. We're crying for nothing.
Go ahead. Don't tell her to shut up. Go ahead. Get 3. Take it over there. But we didn't realize a lot of this stuff because he would talk to us. But sometimes you know how children try and come talk to you. He was a little bit older. They're trying to come talk to you, but they don't just come out. A lot of times they hope by osmosis you can pick it up. And we could tell something's wrong, but it's like, well, what's happening? Oh, well, nothing. Forget it. You know, we're just like, well, okay. But we knew something was happening because the behavior started changing a little bit and just different things. And then constantly putting the headphones on his head and just listening to this music that's vibrating on that lower frequency. We also realized different things that would happen. Just different things. Like I said, I'll share the full story. Started coming in, different thoughts coming into him. And that's when I began to get really scared. I'm like, okay, something is happening. It's possible it could get out of control, right? And he was like holding all this stuff inwardly, not really like dealing with it. And having these sayings that make me feel like, okay, you're thinking about that this is not a good place for you to be, like you were a mistake coming here. Like, so I started looking into things and, you know, just really trying to listen more. But it all came to a head at one particular point. And that's when this particular instance happened where we saw like his face change. Like this was, and what happened was that caused all this to happen. My nephew, the scientist nephew that I be talking about sometimes, he's active duty now. But there was an instance where they had a friend who, a female who was being abused at home, right? So they try to be counselors to their friends and stuff, but she ran away from home. My nephew helped her, not help her run away from home, but he was trying to talk her out of running away. He had kind of said a little bit to us, but not really giving us details. But he was trying to talk her out of running away. And because he couldn't talk her out of running away, he chose to run away with her to make sure she would stay safe.
He's the naive type.
Not naive. He has a really good heart because this little tiny girl, this high school, what grade was this? 9th grade? He was 9th grade. He was 11, you was 9.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. So all of this happened. It was like a whole big mess, and the authorities got involved. It's like, how did we get here, right? And it's like we try to tell them, it's like, I know this kind of sound horrible to say sometimes, but sometimes you have to like tell your children you can't help everybody. Although that's our heart to, you know, we should want to help everybody, but some things, especially when it comes to other families, it really gets kind of messy. And if there's an abuse situation, like all of this stuff, you know, so it was like it was a mess. But what happened, because we was afraid, because we didn't know, he'd never done anything like this before, like running away, like we don't know. But when it happened, I'm like, okay, I'm like, where are they at? Where could they be? Like, we were out looking for them, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm just thinking back through the day. I'm like, this. He came back in, like literally running through my head, like, Pam, you should have caught that. You should have caught that. He came back in, like literally as we was looking. I was like, oh my God, that was a clue. That was a clue. He came back in. You should have known. He never does this. It didn't become clear to after they had run away. And so I was like, oh my God. I'm like, Father, and I'm crying. I'm like, how could I miss this? How could I miss this? I'm like, where they at? So I was praying for them. They would be okay. And Jeremiah was upset, you know, because him and Aaron is like brothers. They like this. They, you know, they still are. He's just active duty right now. Jeremiah's, you know. But so he was concerned for Aaron, because Aaron, they all have this like overly giving heart, you know, and he didn't know if something had happened to him. We hadn't heard from him. They hadn't been to school, and we started tracking, doing our investigation, and we found little things, and like they definitely were here. Like we was like literally out there like search dogs and stuff, and we was finding clues. They definitely went here. This comes from my house. This is the kid stuff. Why did they take this? You know, so just they was gathering supplies to go, because the girl, she was, you know, like I said, it was a sensitive situation. She said, you know, she allegedly was being abused. I'm not really going to get into that, but anyway, what happened, we end up finding them. And about this time, it was me, Jeremiah, my two sisters, my two sisters, the girls' parents, but they were there, but they were like on like this other portion of the field looking while we covered the other grounds. But what happened was, in Jeremiah, because now remember, just think about all these different things, right? The inward keeping in stuff, just a lot of different things. All this stuff I see now, I'm putting the pictures together, like, how could this happen? And so when he was younger, like this, he would do things like, if he was afraid, things, he would go inward and just kind of like protect himself, and he'd zone out or whatever, just like, okay, you're fine or whatever. But when fear comes, it's almost like, you ever seen somebody who gets afraid and all of a sudden it's like this unknown strength takes over? Like, you know, I don't know exactly what to call it, but I can't say all the time, but I want to say maybe it's the multiple that came in to protect them, that's stronger, that will face the fear or whatever. That's the kind of thing that took over. And we saw his eyes change, right? And we, at that time, before that happened, Chloe, I said I was going to save the story, but let me just tell you a few different portions of it. We were looking for them, and we were at the woods, and we had found different clues out here in the woods. And I think they heard us, and they were still trying to get away, because she knew that her parents was probably there too, and she wasn't trying to go back home. And so with calling the authorities, like, we had alerted them. The parents had already alerted them, and they said they were out looking. We don't know, right? So who sits at home when your child is missing and not go look and just let other people? So that's what we just joined in, because our nephew was a part of this as well. We're looking for him. So we had done all the calling and all that stuff. So we're out there looking, and we came upon the place, and I think Jeremiah, what is crazy, and it still freaks me out to this day. It freaks me out because we saw him, me and my sister, the one that's a nurse. Leisha said, listen, wait a minute. She said, and I'm like, do I like not pay attention to nothing? She said, wait a minute, a dog is barking. I'm like, what does that mean? She said, a dog is barking, pay attention. That means somebody's close. They're barking at something, and it's not us. You know, because they're looking. I was like, oh, good. Look, when we went to the escape room with my sister, if it weren't for my sister Leisha that pay attention to these small details and things like this, because she's trained to do that, because she's a nurse, oh my gosh, we wouldn't have got out of that escape room. Like, me and my mama, my two sisters, we went to an escape room and had to figure out these clues and stuff. And I would say, my sister Alicia, she's the one that figured out most of these detailed clues. I'm like, oh my gosh. My baby sister, she just at one point, she said, this is a game. And she sat down, scrolling on her phone. And I'm like, oh my God, we never gonna get out of here. I'm like, TT, if this was a real situation, we all would be almost dead right now, right? But Alicia, she getting there. She always take everything serious. This, oh, check this. Oh no, remember this, that. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. But listen, so she was doing that. And she said, no, listen. I said, oh, you're right. And so Jeremiah was right there. And at this time, remember, he got on his gym shoes. He was, he 19 now. So he had to be about 16. I want to say Jeremiah was 16. 17 or 16. Yeah, because you was 9th grade. Yeah, he's 16. I want to say 16, right? And so we're out there, and it's a nice night. It wasn't cold. Let me tell you, look, no disrespect to anybody. Let me tell you what this nigga did. That dog barked. And as I sit here and think about this, when I say there's some real life freaky crap that be happening around me and stuff, I was like, we gotta figure this stuff out. That dog barked. Alicia said, wait a minute. And she said, you're right. And Jeremiah was just like, almost like he was a watchdog himself or something. And he said, y'all, I kid you not. Jeremiah, and at this time I knew, at this point, this wasn't my son, or something had happened, right? Because he said, he did like this. It was almost like he squatted down to touch the ground or something. But it's like he touched the ground and came back up and was like, Aaron! Like, my nephew's name is Aaron. He went down, he came back up and he screamed, Aaron! And he rips his shirt off. And and I'm like, what the? And he screamed, he came up, took this breath, and he lifts weights, but he seemed extraordinarily huge at this point. And he took a deep breath, and he took off running. You see him on Get Out, when the grandpa, he took off running at night. He was like, that's how Jeremiah took off running through the woods. Oh my God, what is going on here? And I'm like, maybe I should have stayed in the church. I was like, because I need help. I said, the nephew that ran away. My son demon possessed. Liz was like, oh my God, Pam, what's going on? I was like, God, I don't know. I don't even know how we got to this place, right? And so he take off. And when I say, he said, I'm like, oh my God. And next thing I know, he coming back. So I'm like, what? How did you get? Where did you? And I'm standing here. I'm still standing there trying to figure everything out. I'm like, oh my God. I hope he don't catch Aaron, because I don't know what's wrong with him. The way he screamed Aaron's name made my blood curl. And he ripped that shirt like, ah, and took off running like this was some type of movie. I'm like,
look, my point of view is a lot different.
First of all, you weren't even present. You were in the back seat of your body.
The only part that I remember was...
What was this author's name, man? Because you told me the name of this person. What was his name?
I don't know the name.
I remember the name.
If I do know the name, I ain't speaking it because who wants to?
Yeah, right. I'm not. I remember the name.
One part I do remember.
Listen, watch your mouth. You eating a bagel, you got to run your mouth. Listen.
Where I kind of phased out of it. It was when it was around the elementary branch area. When I hit through the woods, I'm gonna be honest. First off, if y'all don't know, I wear glasses. I am blind.
Yeah,
look, the fact is this. I thought it was a little dope. It was my experience, okay? And this is when I was still conscious. I thought it was a little dope. Look,
with the devil, but
the first part of it, I was in control. It just felt kind of cool because it's like, oh my God, I can actually see at night. This is dope. I didn't really give much mind to it, but it was dope because when I hit the woods, I got in there. I was like, bro, I can still see everything. Her father, they said, how can you see? So I was like, oh, it's not that dark. And then
I'm like, it's dark. We got flashlights. That's how dark we got flashlights. Using our phone and stuff. And this Regin, look, Regin is nigga backwards. This Regin running through here like, I'm like, first of all, he gonna hit a tree.
Aaron, the thing is, Aaron, when I was looking for him, we ran through when he ran through the woods and I followed him. When they ran out, it was funny.
I saw her. But for some reason, I couldn't see him, but I knew he was near. Come to find out, he was hiding under the trailer. Right beside, look. I mean, dead smack close. He told me. He was right here. He saw my legs, and he said, bro, when you came right there, because at this point, he knew that something was wrong.
Aaron, grandma, he said, Auntie, that is not your mind.
Look, he just sat there. Homie did. He said he covered his mouth and just sat there. He said his heart dropped. I mean, I'm just sitting by. I'm like, bro, I'm looking at this as weird and kind of cringy because it's like,
we can laugh about this now.
Like, I barely witnessed this. I only saw like bits and skits, and I kind of have a memory of it, but I don't remember that much of it. So I'm over here thinking,
ask those of us who was present that night. Listen, and this is what make it worse. I'm like, my husband come out here, where y'all at? You know, and so listen, this was a night. Was this Friday? Was it a Friday? But anyway, I don't think we had a project the next day because he was like, I'm gonna go ahead and get me a couple drinks and stuff. And he got nice, and he was kind of in walking distance of us. And he came out there, and he want to holler. I was like, listen, Jeremiah's demon possessed. I said, you out here? You want to holler at him? I said, don't do that. You can get us all killed. He was like, girl. I'm like, listen. I said, he got something going on with you. You close to being put in a sunken place. I said, you should stay your butt at home. I said, come out here acting crazy. Yo, when I tell y'all this night, I don't know why this stuff happens. Listen, look, so Jeremiah, he came and gave his little portion. Aaron saw this, and he hiding under the trail and stuff. Imagine we still over here freaking out like, should we leave and just go now? Should we just go back home? Should I? Like, I had my gun on me, right? But I ain't gonna kill my son, you know? And I'm just like, but what do we do? What you say?
I said, y'all bad shot me when I did something crazy.
No, we ain't gonna shoot you, Jeremiah. Listen. And Jeremiah, listen, when I was telling the story earlier, Jeremiah is not the person I was referring to. When I'm talking about Jeremiah in this situation, I clearly tell you because, you know, he's been delivered, right? Listen, so when we had come back, and I'm just like, what should we do? And my husband was like, well, I'm going to go back to the house. Y'all got this under control? Y'all found him? I'm going back to the house, right? Because my husband, he was like, well, we don't play with the devil. I'm going to go. Y'all all stay out here in the woods with Satan. You know, I'm going to change the locks. Right? So, and it's like, listen, y'all, when I tell y'all that night, I didn't go to sleep. Like, I couldn't go to sleep. And I'm checking, I'm like, is Jeremiah really back? Or is this other person? Let me tell you what happened. But we've never had another issue with this since, okay? Now, when I said I was scared, like, I was scared. But I was like, Father, help us. What do we do? Like, your mind go blank, all your spiritual teaching go out, like out the window when you allow fear to creep in. And so when Alicia, because she kind of like, she's learned to keep a calm head, right? She said, Pam, calm down. And she squeezed my arm, like, because I was about to snap off, and she squeezed my arm and yanked it like, stop. And so I was like, okay. I was like, look, and I'm the oldest sister. She 2 years behind me. I was like, okay. I said, you better do something. You better talk down what you learned at the hospital. I said, you better do something about my son. She said, okay. She said, just calm down. Just calm down. She said, just wait a minute, you know. And so she said, Jeremiah. I said, you think he heard you? I said, Jeremiah ain't even present. He can't hear you. Why are you whispering? She was like trying to talk calm because we didn't know whether we should raise our voice. We didn't know what had completely taken him over. But when he got close to us, we could see that his pupils had completely dilated. It was like completely like black. I'm like, yo. And his face, you ever seen somebody's face distort? It didn't distort that much, but that was not my son's face. I'm like, I was like, we're still on lower levels. I'm thinking this to myself. I'm like, clearly, we're still on lower levels of spirituality. We don't really know what we're dealing with here. And that's why I was like, Father, we need your help. I need your help because I don't know what to do. You know? So he came back, and when he didn't get Aaron. Aaron came running out the woods, and the little girl had took off going the other way. He said, you got to go find her for Jeremiah get him. I was like, I don't think Jeremiah's worried about her. He was more so worried about you, making sure you were going to be okay, right? Because it came in because he was scared for Aaron. He didn't know if something would happen because it's all kind of mass murders and stuff out in the streets, right? So that's when I think that's the point when that thing took over. But anyway, so Aaron had come and he ran back to the truck. And he said, Auntie, what is going on? I said, why did you run away from the house? He said, I wasn't running away. I wanted to help her, make sure she didn't get in trouble. I said, you see what it's got us now? And here comes Jeremiah coming from the woods. He had stopped running. I'm like, oh my God. And he was like, Auntie. And Alicia was like, calm down. Jeremiah, baby, get in the trunk. And I'm like, toot, toot. Get in on that side. I'm like, who's driving the truck? I'm going to walk. I'm like, get in the back seat. And he get in there. And he snatches the door open. He gets in the back seat. He puts his hands on the seat. And I'm like, whew. I was like, girl, I drive. I'm not. I was like, he gonna sit here. I'm gonna lock him in the truck. She said, can't lock him in the truck. He can open it from the inside. I was like, what we gonna do? I said, what do we do? Do we call the police? No, I mean, like, not at that point, because police, they pull guns and they shoot. It's like, we trust the Father, but what do we do right now? So he gets in. He's compliant because Aaron is there. And Aaron trying to take you stay right here, because if you run, he gonna run too. And I don't think you're gonna get across the street. Did you see him flying through the woods at night? You saw him while you was under? Just stay here. Right? So he in the back seat. And I was like, okay, everybody get in the truck so we can go home. It's like, who's getting in the back with him? I'm going to be driving. I need somebody to watch him while I drive, make sure he don't snap my neck. Like, we out there, we scared. We're still cracking jokes and stuff, but we can clearly see his pupils is fully dilated, and he's like not playing. He's breathing hard. You can see his body. Somebody breathing hard is upset, right? And so Aaron goes in. I forget what Aaron tried to say to him. And Jeremiah comes up. It was almost like he ripped it looked like he had ripped my passenger seat out the way, the strength he grabbed it and the way it came back like that. And he screamed again, Aaron! And I'm like, and Aaron screamed like, ah! And he's trying to run away. He's like, Auntie, that is not my cousin. I said, stop. And that's when he did that. The way Aaron, and he's a pretty strong little kid. And Leisha is she probably stronger than me. And so she's standing right there. He trying to get between me and her. And she hold him. And at that point, I was extremely upset with what was happening. And so I turned around and I said, and I didn't say, because I'm thinking, should I say in the name of Jesus? But we know Jesus ain't going to come help. He probably driving somebody else's car right now. He ain't coming to help. I said, listen. I said, whoever you are, you better let my son go and get out of here, and don't you ever come back. Jeremiah said, I fell back in the seat. Like, oh my gosh, I'm getting goosebumps. He fell back in the seat like I saw him coming to. Like, and he's like, and he's just looking around. And he looked, and I'm looking at him, and his eyes, I'm like, holy crap. This really just happened. His eyes was back to normal. And I'm like, I don't know who that demon was that took hold of him. But that night, I didn't go to sleep. When I say I stayed up all night that night, I immediately re-implemented my all-night of prayer. I was up all night for the next 6 hours praying in tongues, going to his room, making sure he was still Jeremiah. And I was just like, Father, something has got to give. I don't even know why this should not have happened. This can never happen again. And it's just like, that's why I'm like kind of super sensitive to some of this stuff. But yeah, that is crazy. Look, like the scene in Johnson Family Vacation, after old girl said grace and prayed to the devil. Look. That was funny. Look, so listen, I got all kinds of stories, but yeah, like this is not broken pieces of people. This is actually, it's a combination of a broken person that weakens the structure of the house so intruders can get in. That's what happens. It's broken people, a broken foundation, a broken person, a broken spirit that is not strong enough to keep back intruders who want to come in and steal and take over your place, right? So that's what we have to understand. That's the main reason why I wanted to go ahead and share that story. I was waiting until we came upon something else, but I just shared it. Now I'll probably revisit it. But yeah, and so when we realize that, we'll have a little bit more sympathy with people, you know, or empathy, whatever you want to call it. And we can kind of really not just say, oh, we're going to pray for you and help you get free. Like, we really need to look at it and find out what's going on, how it happened. And we got to kind of, I guess you can say heal. Just, we need to recognize the steps, how it happened, so we can help them clean up the mess, so to speak, so they can be whole, help them put themselves back together again, reinforce the structure, make the house, the foundation strong, so this can't happen again, right? So, but yeah, and we're not gonna restart the other chapter, but let me finish reading to the bottom of this page right here, page 176. Yet the sufferers themselves know otherwise. Quote, they're not personalities, doctor, they're people, end quote, quoted Billy Milligan, the multiple with 24 altars. Poor Billy. Most of his doctors wanted to fuse Billy's altars, merge them together, presumably for, quote, the healing process, end quote, to take place, quote, to make him whole again, end quote. This part of the therapist's agenda is called fusion, integration, a magnificent hybrid, but the patient took a different view. Quote, why do you have to fuse them with me? Excuse me, why can't you get rid of them? End quote. Billy implored his doctor, Keyes, 1981, page 360, 68, and 80. The pathos of his protest is echoed in the desperate words of other multiples. Cam West, quote, the person looking in the mirror isn't me. Somebody else's voice is coming out of my face, end quote. West, 1999, page 51. Sybil, quote, integration, that's a great mirage, end quote. Schreiber, 1973, page 343. Carol T, quote, we hate the word integrated. I must say the cure is worse than the disease, end quote. Cohen et al., 1991, page 170 to 71. And at the end of this quote, there's an asterisk, and at the bottom it says, after effects of a formal integration include headaches, eye aches, lack of coordination, and various other somatic complaints, end quote. Cohen et al., 1991, page 178. And I'll end it right there. It still goes on just a little bit, but I'll leave this for when we actually get back to this chapter. And when we get back here, we are going to reread it again. But yeah, so all of this we got here by answering Kevin's question that I missed yesterday when he asked, I wonder if self-mutilation is trying to, quote, dig the evil out, end quote, right? So Kevin, if you're still here, might be hanging out in the background. You may have said something. I know I missed a couple people's comments. So let me ask you if you still here, because a lot of people's like, yeah, that's a good question. Does that kind of answer your question from yesterday that you asked? And those that was like, yeah, that's a good question. What y'all think? And does that kind of bring a little bit more enlightenment to that? At least for me, it did, especially with some of my experiences and understanding some things and knowing a couple people who've actually taken to cutting themselves at certain times with different things. Now I'm understanding like what has been happening with them. It does. Okay, set apart. Yeah. All right, y'all. So yeah, we at 2 hours and 16 minutes. So I think we will pause here today. So tomorrow we will not be here, right? We will observe the Sabbath for this moon cycle. Mom, yes, absolutely does. Yeah. So on Thursday when we come back, we'll start chapter 4, and chapter 4 is entitled Soul Murder, right? And this is good. It's gonna get into a lot of other people who were inhabited by other spirits and some of the things that it drove them to do. All right, y'all. So let me pages. Nope, we didn't do that. We did pages 172 to 176. We're going to come back. Let me put this page 79 here for Thursday. Page 79. So we're going to start fasting on the Sabbath. Hey, okay. Ooh, listen, y'all. I'd be glad too when we get to the Essenes Gospel of Peace. I'm so excited to read that out loud to y'all. If y'all waiting for me to read it to get to that, it is so good when it talks about the fasting, and it gave me a little bit more insight into my fasting, the fasting that I be doing and how I look at it now. It helped me with this little blockage that I had, right? So I'm like, okay, this is good. It gives you a deeper insight into the scripture in the New Testament where Jesus was saying this kind comes not out but by prayer and fasting, right? It really goes into a lot of detail. I'm like, all of that should have been included when he was talking to everybody, instead of just pulling out that one thing and just letting that be and let us take that how we're going to take it. Oh my gosh. We wouldn't have half the demon-possessed people we have now if all of this portion about the fasting was kept in and what it does and how it delivers the body, not just from excess weight and disease and stuff, but also intruding spirits that would come in. Mom, yes, baby. We'll see. All right, y'all. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get out of here. It is Tuesday. Yeah, since you're here, it is Tuesday, November the 15th, 2022, day 264. Yeah, go look at your face real quick down here in the bathroom and go wash your face. Go. I'll wait for you. It is day 264 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets under the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1283. We read in the book of Sethantes, page 28. I put it in the page. From page 28 to page 30. And that was chapters 15, 16, and 17. And then we read in Field Guide to the Spirit World. We jumped to chapter...
Mom,
yes, baby.
after you see the cutoff, look.
What was this? Chapter 7.
Tuesday.
That's you. We jumped to chapter 7 to answer Kevin's question, and we read pages 172 to 176. So I'll also... I'm not sure. I'll see if it'll let me pull this snippet. If I can pull this snippet from what we read, I'm going to put Kevin's question, and I'll put Kevin who asked the question. And I'll see, of course, with giving proper, I'm going to cite it the right way, let them know where to find it at, from the book. I'll see if I can post the portion that we just read in relation to Kevin's question and answering that. All right.
Because this one
okay. All right, y'all. So with that being said, I love y'all. I will see y'all back here. Hold on. No, pause. Stop it. I see y'all back here Thursday morning, 6:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love y'all. Peace. Go ahead, end it.
Mom, can I end the laptop?
No, Isaiah already asked.
Oh, so I can end the laptop. I can end.
Oh, okay. So,